On the large bridge, shining in the last rays of twilight, stood a guy, thinking about his unbearable life and preparing to end it. Various terrible memories of failures of varying magnitudes flashed through his head. One of them was about his school life. Due to his own awkwardness, this guy named Sui Chen poured water on his classmate, to which she naturally responded by yelling at him in front of many of her acquaintances. A crowd of school children are talking about themselves, expressing their irritation with their classmate and calling him a freak. Sui Chen just stood there with his head bowed, and at his feet lay a bucket in a puddle, from which the girl had been doused. When he tried to justify himself by saying that it all happened by accident and that the floor was slippery, the crowd only continued to insult him. The students call Sui Chen a liar, saying that he always does something strange and then claims that it happened by accident. The girl, wiping her head from the water, also says irritably that this is not the first time, adding that the guy is a loser and brings bad luck to others. The crowd picks up on this insult. Sui Chen only watches it with fear and alarm. The next memory concerned the boy's mother, who also called him a loser because he could not fill out the documents correctly and did not enter an educational institution. The mother even asks Sui Chen why he is such a loser, since all these troubles have been happening to him since childhood. To this, the guy tries to say that the educational institution system was not perfect, and that an error occurred during his inspection. With this, the mother tears up the document about Sui Chen's rejection into the institution and says that nothing is ever right with him. She leaves the room, claiming that the boy is no longer her son, and that she can never rely on him. Sui Chen, his face red from the blows and tears, just stood there sullenly, holding back his tears, trying to figure out what to do next. The guy remembers that his entire short life was full of troubles, misfortunes, and failures. Even his family gradually distanced itself from him because of this. About 10 years had passed since those memories, but Sui Chen's fate had not changed, despite all the wise sayings about turning 30. He thinks that at least love is present in his life in the form of a devoted girlfriend. On this day, the 100th day of their relationship, the guy decided to propose by buying a bouquet of red roses with a card. Eventually, Sui Chen notices the silhouette of his girlfriend and prepares for this important step, smiling happily. However, suddenly the happy smile disappears from his face. He sees something terrible. The fear in his eyes made him freeze in front of this picture. Sui Chen's girlfriend was accompanied by a man in a gray suit who was holding her in his arms and laughing with her about something. The couple headed to a taxi, and the man insisted that the girl was in for an unforgettable night, but she only playfully called him a naughty boy. Sui Chen suddenly lost his strength from such an action, his bouquet of red roses almost falling from his hands. His face lost all emotion, replaced by a mask of apathy. At that very moment, a call came from the guy's phone. It was a call from work, informing him that the guy was responsible for the failure of his current project, and therefore he was fired and could never come back. With this message, Sui Chen's emotions overwhelm him, and he angrily throws the pink bouquet and the phone along with the card onto the ground. He runs away from this place, from this life, thinking that he cannot continue to exist this way, and it is at this moment that Sui Chen runs to the bridge and jumps off it, thinking about what an unbearable hell his life is. Reaching the water, the boy spreads his arms and wings, preparing to accept his death and free himself from endless torture. Sui Chen quietly thinks that if he only hits the bottom, all this will finally end. However, the boy heard a muffled but still loud cry, a plea for help, to which he immediately opened his eyes. Thinking that someone had fallen into the water and was in danger, Sui Chen saw a girl just above him in the water screaming for help. The guy decided to put his suicidal tendencies aside for a short moment and help this unfortunate woman, protecting the remaining air in his mouth and heading towards her. The girl continued to scream and call for help, creating strong splashes of water on the water surface, greatly exhausting herself. The next moment, Sui Chen's hand was on the girl's back. Thus, the guy was trying to help her swim out and reach any stable surface. At the same time, it flashed through his mind that perhaps before his death, he would be able to accomplish at least one good deed in this world. The girl reached the platform, clinging to it with her hand, and coughed violently, trying to get rid of the water in her lungs. When she turned around to see who had saved her, there was no one behind her, so her tired gaze showed strong surprise. Sui Chen, meanwhile, was rapidly approaching the river's day, preparing to finally die without such interruptions for heroic deeds. He thought that now he was dying and freed from all the tortures of the past, present, and future, watching with half-closed eyes the light of the sun breaking through the water. Sui Chen's mind is filled with numerous grievances against him and all sorts of terrible memories, which makes him consider himself cursed, but he thinks that it will all end soon. However, as soon as he closed his eyes and thought about it, the light of the sun seemed to become stronger and come closer to him. With great surprise, the boy watched the huge source of white light that broke through all the matter of water and denied the laws of physics. A male figure appeared in front of him, looking like a giant ghost in blue-green tones, to which Sui Chen thought that it was almost God himself in front of him. Thinking about this, he calmly begs God for help if the curse is really to blame for all his troubles. Meanwhile, the mechanical electronic voice around said something about the successful activation of the ideal life system and the binding of the user to the system. When Sui Chen regains consciousness, he thinks that he has finally died, but he hears voices around him saying that he has woken up and that he is the savior. This makes him realize that he has failed to end his own life and that he is in some strange place that causes a lot of tension. When the guy asks where he is, the rescued girl, accompanied by a doctor, says that he is in the hospital. Sui Chen is told that he was incredibly lucky to have survived, since the chances of it happening were very slim, which is still very unusual for him to hear. The girl he saved smiled happily, glad that her savior was able to survive, and thanked him for his good deed. There was also a female journalist and cameraman in the hospital room who approached Sui Chen to interview him about his heroic deed. The guy just watched all this with fear, realizing that he didn't remember anyone looking at him that way, and thinking that perhaps this was a turning point in his life. The next moment, a large flat hologram appeared in front of Sui Chen, sending him a reminder from the perfect life system, stating that he had exactly 1 year left to live. A few hours later, the guy returns home to a large, depressing multi-story building made of red-brown blocks. He walks into his small studio apartment with minimal furniture, a dirty plate by the computer, and white tiles on the floor. Large brown cockroaches were running around the table around crumbs of food. And on the work desk, there was a framed photo of Sui Chen with his mother as a child. The guy takes off his shoes and thinks that nothing has changed in his life after his heroic mission to save a person. However, turning to the door behind him, Sui Chen realizes that some changes are still unavoidable. The same sea-green ghost enters through the door of the studio apartment, his facial features simplified to the maximum, reminiscent of an emoji. Upon seeing this creature, Sui Chen realizes that this is the same strange guy who calls himself the System and whom he saw before waking up in the hospital. The guy closes the door behind him and asks the ghost why he only has a year to live, who he is, and what the ideal life system is. However, he ignores Sui Chen, turning all his attention to the almost empty plate near the computer on the desk. A few seconds later, the ghost, with an unchanged expression on his face, reports that he has identified the remains of food, among which were pieces of beef and potatoes, to which Sui Chen demands to answer his questions. Hearing this, the ghost spread into a strange liquid-like or slime-like matter and proclaimed the beginning of the answer to the user's request. The apartment darkened slightly around Sui Chen, which was obviously part of the demonstration of her system of answering the 3 questions posed. The system depicted the giant black god as the guy's shadow, saying that he was such a bloodthirsty, ruthless, and unscrupulous dark god in his past life. The various sins of this deity provoked the righteous wrath of heaven, and the heavenly ruler defeated the god and prepared a severe punishment for him. The shadow of the ruler of heaven appeared before Sui Chen, claiming that his sins could not be forgiven and the amount of grief he had brought to the world was incalculable. The Lord of Heaven said that he would send God to 10 earthly lives in the physical world, filled with suffering as punishment. With this suffering, he must pay for his own sins. To this, the figure adds that when the 10th life ends for the dark god, the ruler of the heavens himself will destroy him forever. With this, the demonstration of Sui Chen's backstory as an evil deity was complete, and the ghost of the system was once again gathering itself together. When this ghost showed itself, he began to tell the story further, claiming that this was the last 10th life, and the heavenly ruler saw repentance and decided to give him a second chance. This second chance is the ideal life system, and the ghost is its embodiment, explaining that Sui Chen can think of it as an artificial intelligence. The guy himself, with a nervous smile on his face, says that this is too much and suggests that he started hallucinating due to a lack of oxygen. The ghost explained that all this was true and said that he would help as much as he could and as soon as Sui Chen ordered him, but was interrupted by an angry knock on the door and a shout. The woman ordered the door to be opened, and the guy, recognizing her as his landlady, quickly began to panic about the situation. Remembering that the ghost was supposed to help him, Sui Chen returned to him with a frightened expression and asked if there was anything he could do in such a situation. The ghost claims that user needs have been identified and announces the opening of the Ideal Life System store panel. The open panel displayed various houses, stocks, and even airplanes, from which the system asked him to choose the one he needed. Sui-Chen could not understand how any of this could help him. So the guy orders the ghost to choose the most appropriate combination of things for the situation on his own. Since time for thinking is running out, the system agrees and states that the request has been accepted, and an acceptable combination of things for the situation has been compiled. A list of things is displayed on the screen, including a prestigious CEO position, a Ferrari, a toned body, and a cash reward, along with the most appropriate question. At this time, the landlord opens the apartment door and shouts at his tenant in surprise. However, the next moment the woman stopped and fell silent, her face turning slightly red with embarrassment. In front of her on the floor lay Sui-Chen, who now seemed to her like a handsome guy with a beautiful face, strong muscles and perfect curves, especially emphasized by his posture. With a loving look, the girl asked if he had been going to the gym lately, and if so, why he hadn't told her anything about it, showering her with compliments about his muscles. The girl then recalls that Sui-Chen is not in a romantic relationship and could perhaps come to her tonight, to which he replies that not today. The guy said he would transfer the entire rent after he took a shower, but the girl said there was no need to worry about it and left the apartment. Realizing that the landlady had left, Sui-Chen finally breathed a sigh of relief. But suddenly, a notification came through on his phone. The guy received the phone, thinking that he had thrown it away when he ran to jump into the water, but the notification was from the bank. This notice announced that 100,000 yuan had been transferred to his account, which he stared at for a long time with bulging eyes. The ghost of the system claims that this is not all, and shows a panel with Sui-Chen's company shares with a message that the company secretary will contact him later. A Ferrari was also delivered, which the guy was incredibly happy about, not believing his luck. Sui-Chen falls to his knees and tearfully thanks the heavenly ruler for this system, declaring that he will now pray every day. The ghost says that the guy is in too much of a hurry since the presentation of the system is not yet complete. He claims that the system is a challenge first and foremost. Sui-Chen will need to complete certain tasks to raise his virtue level, which he only has a year to do. When the virtue indicator reaches 100%, the curse of the heavenly ruler will be lifted. But if this does not happen within a year, the boy will die. At this point, the ghost says the presentation is over, but shows one last screen. In it, in addition to the general information about the rules, special attention was paid to the fact that the level of virtue and luck was reduced to 0 after receiving the rewards that made Sui-Chen tense. The guy immediately asks the system if this notification means that his luck will be the same as it was before the suicide attempt. The ghost of the system confirms this, saying that Sui-Chen's current level of virtue is 0. To this he adds that the guy needs to contribute another % of virtues to activate the ideal life system. So now his luck will be even a little worse than before. Sui-Chen goes to the water cooler to pour himself a glass of water and calm down a little in his reaction to this terrible news. And at this moment, the lowered luck indicators make themselves known. Because at the same moment the guy burns his hands when he tries to pour himself hot water, a glass of water falls onto an extension cord on the floor and causes a large electrical surge that hits Sui-Chen's leg. As a result, the electrical box completely burns out from the voltage with characteristic sounds of electricity and a burnt smell. Of course, this resulted in most of the residents of this house losing electricity, accompanied by surprised questions and irritation. Two men approached this electrical box, one of whom was wearing only a towel, apparently having just had a shower, both of whom were surprised at how the box could have burned out. When Sui-Chen walked out of his apartment, the towel-clad man who had just been complaining about who could have done this immediately turned his angry gaze towards him. The boy tried to turn back and leave, but the man ordered him to stop and explain himself. Sui-Chen ran away, claiming that he was just a passerby when the man asked why he was walking stealthily and whether he was to blame for the accident. The boy ran to his new red car, hoping to disappear into it for a while for his own safety. The ghost of the system was already sitting there, and in his company, Sui-Chen was thinking about how good it was that he had escaped so quickly, and whether he would have been lucky enough to get out of this situation alive. However, even such thoughts did not stop the guy from being delighted with his new luxury car, which he contemplated with a wide smile. He tried in every way to attract the ghost's attention to the steering wheel, to the display, praising his new car in every way. The ghost reminded Sui-Chen to keep an eye on the time he had left until the end of the year, to which he replied that the system couldn't make him happy at least for a while. Before the ghost could give any answer, the guy's phone suddenly gave a notification about a call that he had to take. After no congratulations, Sui-Chen heard someone calling himself Fatty announce a school reunion party that he was supposed to attend. He argued that the guy needed to put someone in their place and make them look at him with respect, adding that they would see each other soon. The ghost of the system formulated this task as Sui-Chen having to go to this class reunion and do something that would leave his classmates speechless. The guy only responded angrily that he had no one to take with him, since the girl had dumped him yesterday, adding that she would be a laughingstock at this meeting. Moreover, he remembers that Sun Haoran and his friends who are hosting this party were not very kind to him. The boy remembers a dark school toilet and 3 figures in front of him, blood from his mouth, someone else's saliva on his own face, and torn and dirty notes. In the end, Sui-Chen claims that these 3 bullied him at school in any way they could and wanted. The ghost of the system looked at the guy with his characteristic emoji-like face with its minimal details for a few seconds. After that, he asked Sui-Chen if it wasn't a matter of a few minutes at the moment, since he only needed to hand over a few gift bags to show off his new status. And thanks to this, the guy can not only complete the task but also put his old enemies in their place. Sui-Chen thinks about it timidly, claiming that his school past is not the same as his adult present. The guy claims that everything the ghost said now makes sense to him and says that they should drive by pressing the gas pedal in the car. However, suddenly the car does not move at all. As it turned out a little later, the fuel tank was open, to which the ghost of the system only laughed. After some time, Sui-Chen was finally able to reach his destination. A restaurant worker approached him and said that parking near them was prohibited. The guy rolls down the windows of his car and tells the worker that he is in a hurry, asking her to help him out of the car. The girl was obviously shocked by the attractive appearance of the owner of this car and was unable to respond adequately to this, as Sui-Chen had already left. The guy introduces himself and takes the worker's hands to hand her the car keys and states that he leaves it to her, and responds approvingly with a face flushed from the awkwardness of the situation. Sui-Chen thinks about how this is his first time doing something like this, and notes that he is indeed not used to this kind of thing. The ghost of the system asks the guy if he knows about such a capability as the president's behavior, holding a small screen in his hands. This screen showed a man and a woman in an elegant pose. The system says that Sui-Chen should stick to this behavior for the entire evening, and then everything will go without any trouble. Having gathered his courage a little and told himself that he could do anything, he went into the main hall of the restaurant, where his old acquaintances were already gathering. As he walked towards the center of this hall, Sui-Chen thought that he would become number 1 if he completed this task of reuniting with his classmates. The guy sees many familiar faces, realizing that he will now have to somehow interact with everyone here in order to complete the task. However, he doesn't know how to interact with them to show his new status. Simply approaching them and talking about money and a luxurious life looks like a losing strategy. Suddenly, Sui-Chen notices a familiar and important figure approaching him in the depths of the luxurious hall of this restaurant. His face turns a little red because that face is the girl he had a crush on back in school. This girl's name was Li Hanyi. She had red hair and a short black dress. She was standing at the bar with a cocktail in her hand and thinking about something. The guy thinks that he should go up and say hello to an old acquaintance, but something will stop him. The waiter, who was carrying a plate with several glasses of wine, suddenly lost his balance and poured several glasses onto Sui-Chen. The sounds of glass, metal, and the waiter's intense movements attracted all of the boy's classmates, which indicated his next failure. Sui-Chen only looked at the stain on his own suit with concern, instead of the waiter bowing and begging for forgiveness. While the waiter anxiously tried to wipe away the stain and apologized, he saw how everyone around him was looking at him with a slightly mocking look. In the crowd, he heard his classmates talking among themselves that he was that Sui-Chen, the loser of their class, laughing at themselves. Unable to withstand such pressure, the guy runs away, answering that not everything is well with him and he is very sorry. As he runs away, Sui-Chen still hears his classmates' laughing comments and calls him the same loser he was in school. The guy locked himself in the toilet stall and sat down, sadly thinking that his luck had failed him again and everything had returned to the way it had been before. Suddenly, a ghost of the system appeared in the toilet stall, which greatly frightened Sui-Chen, who angrily ordered it to appear in a more normal manner. After a short skirmish, the ghost asks with his unchanging expression how the task is going. To this, Sui-Chen responds with silence, a sad expression on his face and a bowed head. After such a pause, the guy in a mournful tone states that he feels that he will not be able to complete the task set for him. Surprising the ghost, He says that unless he gets lucky, he will look like a fool in the eyes of others. Recalling how similar things happened to him in school, the ghost suddenly interrupts Sui Chen's monologue and says, to the latter's surprise, that he should do nothing then. To this, the guy responds with a bunch of questions about whether he will die if he simply refuses, as was said earlier, coming to the conclusion that the ghost also considers him a loser. The system, with an uncharacteristically detailed and serious expression, asks that if Sui Chen really wants it, let him receive the value of virtues. Such an ominous phrase, together with the facial expression, causes a certain shock in the guy, so he does not know what to answer. However, just a few seconds later, the ghost explains with a smile that now Sui Chen cannot buy back the props without virtues, but as long as he completes the task, his capital will grow. The ghost goes on to say that the boy has a luxury car, money and stocks, so impressing his classmates shouldn't be such a difficult task anymore. He adds that, especially if people look at him like trash, then wouldn't he like to show them their true place? Classmates think that the person in front of them is the same Sui Chen, but for now he is a completely different person, chosen by heaven. The ghost talks about this and encourages the boy to complete the task, continuing to claim that he has changed, as have the roles of his relationships with his classmates. Sui Chen becomes confident and realizes that he is no longer the man who bore his name, and that is why he must complete the task and lift his curse. As soon as the boy walked out, he heard a female voice calling out to him, claiming that it was indeed Sui Chen. It was Li Hanyi, she continued speaking, expressing her astonishment that a guy came to the party hosted by Sun Haoran. The guy just excitedly repeated her name, surprised by the fact that the girl he was in love with had spoken to him first for so long. Li Hanyi said that the alumni meeting was nothing more than Sun Haoran, showing off his new position as vice president of his father's company. Sui Chen, in turn, claims that he got the impression that they did not know each other that well. So he asks why the girl approached him. A classmate, in an irritated and reserved manner, reminds a guy of an unpleasant incident between them in high school. When Sui Chen asks what exactly this is about, the girl accuses him of pretending to be innocent. Li Hanyi says the guy once burst into the dance group's dressing room and spied on her while she was changing. Sui Chen instantly recalls this incident, saying that he really didn't want to do anything like that back then, and it happened by accident. The teacher asked him to take his things to the locker room, so the boy went in, not expecting to see anyone, since he had previously asked the cleaning lady if there was anyone else in the locker room. Li Hanyi adds to this that the guy ran away from there like a real coward, to which Sui Chen said that she beat him badly and was afraid for his ribs. Suddenly, someone from the crowd interrupts their conversation, asking what all the noise was about among their classmates. It was Sun Haoran who, upon seeing the girl, immediately began showering her with compliments, calling her the school flower and yet so beautiful after so many years. He even offers the girl to join his company, claiming that he will even provide her with a managerial position. The girl refuses, saying that she has just signed a contract with the Galaxy Group to become their advertising model. The crowd starts to chatter about how successful the company is, and how this position is suitable and worthy of Li Hanyi, which causes some tension in Sun Haoran. However, he later notices Sui Chen in front of him, calling him miserable and surprised that he even came to the party. Sun Haoran says he heard the guy have bad luck with the wine earlier in the evening, saying he has bad luck in life in general, especially with money. He says that no matter how worthless Sui Chen is, he is willing to offer help, and after all, his classmates need help. A guy offers his old classmate a job as his personal driver, dismissively claiming that it must be the best job he has ever had. Sui Chen says he doesn't want the job, refusing a handshake, deflecting the hand extended to him by his classmate. Sun Haoran, with the skin on his palm reddened, only tries to say something to the guy in an irritated and tense manner, but he is interrupted by him. Sui Chen says he is grateful for the help, however he, like Hanyi, joined the Galaxy Group, which was obviously a good idea, since otherwise he would have become like Sun Haoran. He immediately shouted, it seemed, throughout the entire restaurant what the guy meant by this. A few seconds later, Sun Haoran decides to ask which part of Galaxy Group his classmate works for. Not believing that he could even work for such a company, Li Hanyi watches this quietly, also unsure if Sui Chen is telling the truth and not just trying to brag about something that doesn't exist. He also replies that let everyone think what they want about this, but he works in the main department of the Galaxy Group company. Hanyi notes that Sui Chen's behavior rather tells her that this is true, also adding that she has never seen such confidence and attractiveness in him. Sun Hyorin only asked in surprise how his classmate could have distinguished himself so well that he had received a high position. To this, Sui-chen confidently says that they have gathered for a class reunion, not for his personal criticism conference, adding that it may be due to Haren's own lack of confidence. The classmate tries to get out of this situation, hesitantly claiming that he didn't mean anything like that at all. The tension between Han Yi, Haren, and Sun Chen was quite obvious and attracted the attention of everyone present in this hall. Suddenly, this tension is interrupted by a male voice shouting something about money and the wrong attitude towards it. It was one of his classmates who was talking about how he had to look for parking because someone's Ferrari was parked right at the entrance to the restaurant. Sun Horan is surprised to hear about the Ferrari with the number plate and doesn't understand who could afford to drive it among his classmates. A classmate says that this car can be seen right now if you open the curtains, which many do, showing off a red Ferrari. He adds that the car is unlikely to be seen by any of his classmates. People gathered around the windows, discussing how good the car was, how proud its owner must be of it, and that it cost about 4 million yuan. Sun Horan joins the conversation and says that this is not an ordinary Ferrari, but is made of eco-materials, which increases the cost of the car to 6 million. After this, he says that the owner of this Ferrari must be really rich, since this car is twice as expensive as a Maserati, adding that he would be happy to meet this person. Li Hani, meanwhile, turns to Sui-chen while everyone continues to discuss the luxury car. He sits quietly in a small chair, crossing his legs and drinking red wine. Sun Horan also turns his attention to him and says that the guy must have seen a lot of luxury cars while working at Galaxy Group, adding that he is interested in seeing Sui-chen's own car. Meanwhile, the same employee who first met the guy at the entrance to the restaurant and was looking for him, calling him Mr. Sui, enters the hall. Eventually, the girl sees him in the chair and says with a smile that she had been looking for him for a long time after that meeting. She bows and hands back the keys to the Ferrari, saying that she has never driven such an expensive car and doesn't dare, so she asks him to park it himself. This instantly causes an electric shock in all the classmates present, who are unable to even react normally to the knowledge they have received. Sui-chen says that he has already greeted everyone, so he sees no point in reparking the car. So he tells the girl to mind her own business. The guy who was talking about the Ferrari at the beginning immediately hugs Sui, asking when he became so fancy, to which he replies that it's just a car. Before this, he adds in a somewhat dismissive manner that money is something outside the body, and the more material it is, the more superficial it is. Sui-chen finally says that no matter how much money he has, everyone here is equal, and he does not use status to divide people into castes, while looking at Sun Horan. A crowd of classmates support the guy in his speech, saying that they really are more important to each other than money and raise their glasses to their friend. At that very moment, a panel invisible to everyone else appears in front of Sui-chen with a notification that the task assigned to him has been completed with a reward of 5% of virtues. The crowd continues to revel, a bunch of people offer to drink a little more, and then a little more, and all attention has shifted from Sun Hyorin to the new star of the evening. This guy stood to the side and cursed Sui-chen with an irritated expression, saying that they would see what the future would bring. Meanwhile, near the restaurant, in the same red Ferrari, a girl was sitting and broadcasting, telling her subscribers about it. She said she didn't expect to see such a luxurious car when she walked around the city that evening, adding that despite the luxury, it wasn't all that comfortable to drive. The girl says that even though she has never driven a car like this, her thoughts would hardly have changed if she had had this experience, which Sui-chen, who had just left the restaurant, had already observed. The comments warned Lisa, the streamer, about the man behind her, but she only reacted when he turned to her, losing his own balance. Sitting in front of Ferrari, she didn't know how to react to this whole situation, while Sui-chen for some reason bowed down in front of her. As it turned out, he took Lisa's phone, playfully saying that the live broadcast was still ongoing. With a sad head, the girl turned to Sui-chen, apologizing and saying that she didn't want to get into his car. After this, Lisa, with a sad expression on her face, asks the guy to return her phone to her. Sui-chen replies that he would be happy to return it, but asks what he should do about the scratch on the car that the girl left after her fall. The guy says that he gives the girl two options to deal with this problem, the first of which is monetary compensation, to which Lisa says that she cannot afford that. So Sui-chen says she only has the second option left to work on to solve this problem. After this, he brings the phone and tells the girl to get into the car, which causes a lot of comments from very differently excited people. Lisa doesn't understand what's going on when Sui-chen opens the car door and pushes her inside. At the same time, the guy continues to film her and broadcast. The girl is scared and shocked by all these actions. Sui Chen, watching the broadcast, says that Lisa's channel's popularity is growing very quickly. After that, he gets behind the wheel and places the phone in part of the car's display so that the broadcast screen shows everything that is happening and tells the girl that the viewers like this kind of story. Lisa tries to get out of the car, saying that she will pay the guy back, but he abruptly stops her. Sui Chen grabs the girl's hand and holds it tightly so that she doesn't dare run away. After that, he asks Lisa how many tens of thousands of dollars she can afford to pay for this car. To this, the girl modestly and embarrassedly says that she will not be able to pay such a large sum. Sui Chen, to the approval of the broadcast viewers, says that it is just a trip and he needs Lisa to take him home because he is currently drunk and cannot drive. Lisa asks if all he really needs is to just be taken home, and is somewhat surprised by such a request. Sui Chen responds approvingly and orders her to hurry with the execution if she does not want to pay compensation. A few minutes into the drive, the girl nervously asks if she drives well enough, saying that she has never had such an experience with such an expensive car. To this, Sui Chen reacts angrily and tells her enough, causing the girl to even fear for her life a little. The guy approaches her indecently with a displeased expression on his face, to which Lisa only excitedly asks what he is doing. As Sui Chen approaches further, he asks how the girl can drive without wearing a seatbelt, which is followed by worried comments from viewers, some of whom feel the need to call the police. After some time, the policeman actually knocked on the car window. At first, the guy didn't even understand who was making the noise. When he saw the uniform, he was very scared, and the policeman said hello and asked him to move the car further away. After some time, in a strange, incomprehensible way, the car ended up at the police station. It turned out that Lisa had abandoned Sui Chen, leaving him in this place and running away from the suspicious man. However, as soon as the guy thought about it, he noticed a note in which the girl wrote that she did not know the address where he lived and took him to the police, also indicating her number in case of compensation. The ghost, meanwhile, asks Sui Chen for his thoughts on virtues, to which he replies that they are not that difficult to obtain. In addition, the guy is surprised that he was not arrested, although the police are so close, to which he explains that the level of luck has become equal to the usual, and therefore this could not happen. Sui Chen notes that it really isn't that bad, and the party even went off without any incidents yesterday after the wine incident. Meanwhile, the ghost offers the guy to change his address to something more worthy of his current status. Sui Chen is only thinking about how to change it, considering that he barely has anything left of 100,000 yuan. To this, the ghost replies that, of course, all this is exchanged for virtues, the interest that he earned with his first task. After that, he shows a panel of exchange examples that he prepared according to the exchange options available to Sui Chen. The guy looks closely at the options offered by the system and begins to think about his possibilities. He was presented with luxurious villas in both modern styles and those that seem to belong to outstanding historical monuments. All of them cost his entire virtue level of 5%, which made Sui Chen think that once he acquired one of these immobilities, his luck would disappear again. The guy chooses something slightly different, and the ghost asks to show what exactly was chosen in order to activate the exchange. The system sees that it is only 4 suites in the Jianyang district, which Sui Chen explains as a budget purchase since he only spends 1% of virtue. The ghost of the system says that in that case they should take a look at the guy's new house. The red Ferrari stops, and Sui Chen has a slightly tense expression on his face from what he just saw. There were 4 security guards in black suits and sunglasses standing in front of the car, apparently waiting for him. Sui Chen anxiously wonders if he has underestimated the cost of just 1% of his virtues on such a purchase. One of the guards finally approaches the car window and, knocking on the window, greets the guy. Next, he picks up the phone with the guy's photo and asks if it is Mr. Sui Chen in front of him. The somewhat reserved guy replies that he is the one in the photo and is that gentleman. The guards are all a little unsure as the man in front of them looks much better than in the photo, but Sui Chen is more angrily assuring them of his identity. Subsequently, the guy and his entourage reach the place. It was a real luxurious estate in neoclassical style. Parking nearby, Sui Chen met with other guards and servants at the entrance to this elite area. The aged footman bowed before his new master and pointed out the direction in which they should move. The man led Sui Chen through a wide alley full of classical sculptures and fountains to the grand entrance of the estate. The estate was resplendent with luxury. The walls were filled with replicas of famous paintings such as Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa and Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night. Sui-Chen was incredibly surprised by such wealth and asked who owned this estate. Suddenly, he hears a female voice claiming that this house was prepared by Galaxy Group for a new major shareholder. Later, the girl rephrased it in such a way that the estate currently belonged directly to Sui-Chen Yewa. A girl with long white hair and wearing a maid uniform greeted her new master, claiming that she was his butler and personal maid. The maid bowed to Sui-Chen and introduced herself as Carly. For a while, the guy's brain stopped working, unable to withstand the beauty of the maid and the very fact that she worked for him. When Sui-Chen came to his senses a little, he immediately asked the butler if she was sure that everything around him belonged to him. The girl answers in the affirmative, adding that 10 years ago, Galaxy Group built a number of similar residences together with management teams for its main shareholders. Next, Carly clapped her hands together, wanting to show off her team. Instantly, Sui-Chen is surrounded by a dozen uniformed servants and bows before their new master. After this, they greet each other in unison and say that everything in this estate is the guy's property. At this point, Carly's butler decides to add something to this statement and attracts the master's attention. The girl claims that just as everything here is Sui-Chen's property, she too belongs to this category. The young master's wild imagination, of course, could not withstand such words, and his nose even started bleeding. Sometime later, Sui-Chen wakes up in the bedroom of his own estate under somewhat uncomfortable circumstances. He was lying on Carly's lap, who placed her hand on his forehead and finally noticed that the boy was awake. Sui-Chen gets up and asks what's wrong with him, to which the maid assures him that he is fine. He was just very excited and dizzy. The guy takes bloody tissues out of his nose, thinking about how awkward this situation was. Having come to his senses a little, he asks the butler when he needs to go to work at Galaxy Group. To this, Carly only asks with a certain amazement in her eyes why Sui-Chen needs to go to work. The guy asks if he should have a position in the company as one of the company's largest shareholders. At this point, the butler briefly introduces Sui-Chen to the company's system, where major decisions are made by the 4 largest shareholders, with important positions held by shareholders on the board of directors. Even though the guy belongs to this board, at the moment the position he is supposed to take is not that relevant. So first of all, Carly should do some research with the main company and inform the guy later. When Sui-Chen asks about his current source of income, the girl gives him a credit card, which receives dividends from stocks every year. The guy looks at the card and thinks that his money could suddenly disappear due to bad luck, so he needs to find some kind of permanent source of income. Instantly, he has an idea of how he should spend these funds in order to receive new ones regularly. Meanwhile, the action moves to the Jianyang district with many high-rise buildings where middle-class people live happily. Connie walks around this area and talks to her parents on the phone about work and her brother. Her mother pressures her to take a residential place when he moves to study in her city. The girl tries to deny it. Suddenly crossing the road, Li Hanyi almost gets into a car accident, and her mother continues to aggressively push her line. The girl angrily responds to the driver who almost hit her, which is completely incomprehensible to her mother from the context. Li Hanyi says that he understands everything that was said, but he is in a hurry to get to work, so he hangs up, tired of listening to all this. Later, she notices that there is a man of about 60 standing by the notice board, posting or taking down an ad. The girl immediately runs up to him and, calling him uncle, asks if he suddenly has any housing to rent out. The husband says that he rented out his apartment a long time ago and came here to take down his ad. Li Hanyi then asks him if he knows where she can rent a room, to which he tells her that everything in that area has long been rented out and it's worth looking somewhere else. The girl does not give in to her interrogation and says that it is very expensive to look somewhere, adding that she is ready to rent something. Uncle, with a dissatisfied expression, notes Li Hanyi's particular persistence. He eventually advises her to go look in the back area, but warns her that the rooms there are quite expensive. The girl approaches the notice board in that area and, seeing a man nearby, asks if he has any accommodation for rent. The man, of course, turns out to be Sui-Chen, who was caught with a rubber band in his mouth and a surprised look on his face. Recognizing him, Li Hanyi couldn't believe her eyes and asked again what the guy had done in turn. After some time, the girl asks Sui-Chen what he is doing in this area and whether he suddenly lives here. He replies that he doesn't live here and just came to post an advert for rent in the Zhongfu community. Li Hanyi quickly glanced at the ad and wondered if the guy really didn't live in this area. Very suspicious of Sui-Chen, the girl asked where his luxury car was, to which he replied that it was parked in the parking lot because there was no space. Li Hanyi's gaze showed even more distrust, so the guy points it out in a slightly irritated manner, claiming that she doesn't believe him. Suddenly, Sui Chen receives a call, accompanied by a ringtone and a loud vibration in his pants pockets. It was a potential tenant asking about the place, to which the guy said that the house was still available, encouraging him to check out the possible property. After hanging up the phone, Sui Chen ponders why Li Hanyi doesn't believe him about his new financial status. The girl says it was quite unexpected how the guy turned out to be a real estate agent, adding that she didn't think she was capable of working in the service industry. When the guy tries to say something, Li Hanyi claims that he most likely rented a car that day, saying that he should stop doing such things. This lack of recognition causes great anger in the guy, but his subsequent actions as a result of this anger seem illogical. He decides to lie to the girl that he stole the car from his boss, just as the houses belong to his boss, presenting it as an angry and emotional confession. Li Hanyi supports him and says that she understands, adding that there is no need to be afraid next time, and that she doesn't want to expose him for his lies. Sui Chen changes the subject and asks that the girl seem to want to rent a place, offering her services. Li Hanyi replies that she indeed needs to rent an apartment, but she has a very limited budget for it. Meanwhile, two boys on bicycles were riding past them, one of whom risked crashing into passers-by, not watching his movements. Sui Chen notices this and tries to move Li Hanyi away from the possible confrontation, saying that it is dangerous here. Eventually, the cyclist also notices them, but is unable to do anything except have a frightened expression on his face. The boy crashes into Sui Chen's back, flying through the air above his bike and causing all three of them to fall. His friend, another cyclist, tells him to run as fast as he can from that spot to avoid getting into trouble. Sui Chen, meanwhile, clutches his head and tries to come to his senses, cursing the cyclist along the way. The ghost of the system appears and reports that due to the guy's attention, his level of virtue has increased by 0.1%. Sui Chen finally notices Li Hanyi lying on the asphalt next to him and asks if she is okay. To his great regret, the guy grabbed the girl's breast with his left hand and did not let go of it the whole time, which did not bode well. Li Hanyi calls him a fraud and punches him in the face, while the system notification reports the calculation of 1% of virtues. Sui Chen tries to excuse himself from this by saying that it happened by accident, but the girl doesn't want to listen to it. A few minutes later, the guy returns to her with water, medicine, and popsicles, hoping to make up for his guilt a little. After that, Sui Chen only watched Li Hanyi with a very guilty expression, while the ghost of the system simply stood by. The ghost eventually intervenes, saying something dubious about how the guy did nothing wrong and how he was better at it in his past life. However, Sui Chen's irritated look at him was enough to end this speech. Li Hanyi decided to apply a cold bottle of water to her injured leg to cool it down and ease the pain. Sui Chen, watching this, says that he bought the water for her to just drink, and the ice cream was supposed to be a cold compress. The girl, somewhat irritated, replies that she will use these things as she sees fit. The boy, hearing this, puts the medicine in a bag, causing Li Hanyi to be a little surprised. Sui Chen comes closer and asks for the opportunity to apply medicine to his leg as an act of retribution for what he did. He squeezes the gel onto his hands and carefully spreads it over the reddened area of his leg, massaging it at the same time. The guy says that the girl should be patient for a little while because it might hurt, but she just watches him. Li Hanyi looked at Sui Chen and remarked to herself how handsome he looked, especially in the context of such a kind deed. When the guy asked her if it had gotten better and if the pain had been dulled, the girl quietly confirmed it. Sui Chen's gaze lingers on the leg and his aura changes slightly, turning into a black cloud. The guy with a wide, aggressive smile says that he would really like to lick this foot. This was, of course, followed by a few seconds of no silence between Sui Chen and Li Hanyi, as the latter could not even imagine such a thing. As soon as the girl came to her senses, she immediately kicked the guy in the face, calling him a pervert. After that, Li Hanyi hurriedly left, which was commented on by the ghost, who now could not see the damage on her leg. Meanwhile, Sui Chen was feeling sorry for himself, thinking about how he could say something like that. Finally, with tears in his eyes and a bloody nose, he talks about how difficult it is to deal with girls. The ghost tells the hysterical boy that he should work harder and more diligently, since his current level of virtues is negative. Suddenly, someone decided to call Sui Chen, which briefly interrupted the boy's tears. From the conversation, it was clear that it was Uncle Han who had called, and the guy confirmed his name to him. In the end, this uncle suggested that Sui Chen go on a blind date with someone. A few hours later, the action moves to the airport, where a crowd is excitedly discussing a luxury car and wondering who the driver is. Those who looked into the car itself saw a beautiful girl and noted her beauty and sense of style and clothes. However, suddenly the crowd's attention turned to the car behind the girl, which aroused her great curiosity. Parked behind her was the driver of a luxurious red Ferrari 488, who was, of course, Sui Chen. Suddenly, two cars pulled up alongside each other on the road, and the driver had the opportunity to see the owner of the car. Seeing him, the girl modestly, but not without interest, notes the guy as quite handsome. Sui Chen at this time has the most exhausted expression and barely notices everything that is happening around him. Eventually, the girl decides to ask the guy if he has someone without much ceremony. To this, Sui Chen replies that he was set up on a blind date and says that she came to pick up her friend. The driver adds that this friend also had a blind date, which she tries to avoid by saying that she is running late and leaving. At that moment, a girl in a long black dress and with long purple hair appears near two cars holding a suitcase in her hands and waving to her friend. The driver tells her to quickly get into the car because they need to hurry in case her blind date boyfriend is already here. Suddenly, the girl notices Sui Chen in a red Ferrari and looks at him with surprised eyes. With her face slightly reddened from embarrassment, she asks the guy if it is really Sui Chen in front of her. The guy greets her modestly and says that it has been a long time since they last saw each other, calling her Yu Xuan. After this, both recall events from 10 years ago when the two were still in school. Yu Xuan peeked out from behind the wall and watched as her father told the boy that his mother had left home the previous night. He tells him to give him the money and the keys to the apartment, since his mother asked him to. The boy looks sadly at the money and keys, unable to truly understand why his mother abandoned him. Uncle Han tells him that he knows he is going to take the college entrance exam, and that he is his mother's son despite her actions, to which Sui Chen thanks him and leaves. When the boy walked away a little, the man with a sorrowful expression claims that he feels incredibly sorry for him, to which Yu Xuan asks if it is not his own fault. The girl tries to say that the boy killed his father himself, but Khan shuts her mouth. The man orders her not to say such stupid things and not to listen to everything that passers-by say. Taking one look at the boy, Uncle Han says that he is simply very unhappy. After some time, the blind date finally started, and Sui Chen sat with Yu Xuan and her friend in a restaurant, unsure how to start a conversation. The guy decides to call out to the waiter in order to distract his attention and the attention of his companions a little. Yu Xuan, watching this, mentally noted that if this was the same guy, then he had changed a lot. The girl's friend whispered to her why she hadn't told her that her companion was so rich and good-looking, to which she replied that she hadn't seen him for 100 years and barely recognized him. Finally, a waiter came to their table and, after greeting them politely, asked what they wanted. Yu Xuan says that the guy can choose himself, and her friend playfully adds that she will eat everything. Sui Chen recalls Uncle Han's words, but responds that he is no longer the same person he once was. First, the guy decides to order a large bluefin tuna along with crab and beef steaks. However, he later tells the waiter to forget all this and bring everything they have on the menu. Such an order shocks the waiter, since serving such customers with extravagant orders is never an easy task. Yu Shen and her friend were also shocked by Sui Chen's statement, not expecting such things at all. The waiter, meanwhile, tries to explain that even their cheapest dish is quite expensive, so such an order might not be affordable to many people. At this time, Yu Xuan thinks that the guy is either an upstart or really incredibly rich, but it is unknown when exactly he became that way. The ghost of the system informs Sui Chen that his companion considers him to be abundant and is very angry about it. At this point, the girl's friend says that it would be better if they just ordered a few dishes, since they wouldn't be able to eat them all anyway. Sui Chen says that it's okay, they don't have to pay and they can enjoy the food. Yu Shen says it's too expensive to order so much and apologizes for not seeing him for so long. The ghost tells Sui Chen how this girl is very caring and attentive to him. The guy asks the waiter how many tables they have free and then tells him to tell the other guests to leave when they are finished, saying that he will pay for everything. At this point, Yu Xuan's patience runs out and she decides to stop her companion from doing such things. The girl angrily and irritably claims that Sui Chen should not behave like that, saying that she knows him well. The guy ignores this and shows his card, which receives annual dividends from Galaxy Group. Sui Chen gives the card to the waiter and says there is no need to worry as he will pay for everything in advance. The ghost reports that the boy is treated with contempt and therefore his task must be to conquer Yu Xuan. The guy tells his companion that he is the executive director of Galaxy Group and therefore a fairly wealthy man. He says this to avoid many awkward questions, while Yu Xuan asks the guy again in surprise, Her friend wonders if Sui Chen could really be the CEO of Galaxy Group. The guy mentally asks the ghost of the system if this is enough to complete the task of conquering it, to which it remains silent. Meanwhile, the waiter returns with a card and addresses Sui Chen with a very tense expression, trying to maintain a polite smile. He claims that there is no money at all on the card that was given to him. Later, Sui Chen has brought out a credit card machine and tries to pay for the order, but the notification says the balance is zero. Not understanding what's happening to his card, the guy tries to swipe it again and again and again. Eventually, he feels the atmosphere become tense, and people in the restaurant start talking about him as if he were a braggart and a loser. Sui Chen laughs in an overly dramatic manner, but his laughter is more like hysteria. To the surprise of his companions, the guy apologizes to the waiter and says that it was his mistake. Sui Chen says he bought real estate with the card and didn't notice when the money on it ran out, saying he would ask his personal secretary. After this, he asks the waiter where the bathroom is in this restaurant and, having received an answer, goes to the toilet, promising to return soon. Sui Chen runs past a mysterious young man in a black hooded jacket who was standing nearby with his head bowed. The guy grabs onto a passerby, onto one of the metal decorations on his jacket, but doesn't stop. The red-eyed passerby casts a mysterious glance at Sui Chen, as if he had known him for a long time. The guy himself is sitting in the toilet, accompanied by the ghost of the system, and asking himself how it happened that there is no money on the card. Eventually, he pulls himself together and decides what his plans are, to call the butler Carly and find out everything. The girl immediately picks up the phone and asks how she can help her master. Sui Chen aggressively asks why there is no money on the card she gave him, promising to beat her ass if she doesn't get an adequate explanation. Carly explains that this is because the dividends are paid out annually, so there won't be any new income until next year, adding that she explained this before. Moreover, the maid asks again what the guy wanted to do with her, saying that if it weren't for that, she could have helped. With that, Sui Chen hangs up and looks at his phone in despair. Next, he begins to beg the ghost of the system with tears in his eyes to help him get out of this situation with dignity. Meanwhile, the order has already been prepared and delivered to the company's table. The waiter wishes delicious food to Yu Xuan and her friend. Meanwhile, the driver excitedly asks why Sui Chen has been gone for so long, thinking that something is wrong. She also asks her friend about how she thought she and the guy were childhood friends and not in a romantic relationship. And if this whole date is bothering her, Yu Xuan says that if the guy wants to make a fool of himself, then let him do it with all the consequences in the form of washing floors and dishes as work off this dinner. After this, she invites her friend to try everything that was brought, claiming that the dishes are very tasty. The driver replies that it's not that he doesn't want to eat all of it, he's just afraid, to which Yu Xuan asks what he's afraid of. The girl replies that if Sui Chen is really pretending, then those who ate, that is, the two of them, will have to pay. Hearing this, Yu Xuan stops eating with a tense expression, realizing what the guy got her into. Afterwards, they both look at the 500,000 yuan bill and can't believe their eyes. Yu Shen tearfully asks how much they will have to wash dishes to earn that amount, to which her friend sarcastically replies that she is very smart since she tried every dish. However, the driver later says that he doubts that Sui Chen is really pretending. Yu Xuan says that the guy better not pretend that he can pay that kind of money for going to a restaurant. To this, she adds that in any case, such pretense will not lead to anything good. Meanwhile, in the toilet stall, negotiations are taking place between the ghost and Sui Chen. The former is willing to provide a favor, but at the cost of a fortune. The guy claims that the system of an ideal life should help him. Otherwise, there is no point in it. To this, the ghost replies that Sui Chen must know of his sinfulness and that he came to this earth to atone for his sins. The guy asks shyly if he turns to a ghost for help, how much will it cost him? The ghost presents a panel of the ideal life system with a picture of a gift box tied with a ribbon and says that it will only cost 500,000 yuan. However, he goes on to say that the price for such a gift is enormous. 3% of virtues, which shocks Sui Chen, who claims that he will die without these percentages. However, as soon as the ghost says that he is taking this gift back, the guy orders him to wait. Sui Chen says that since childhood, only Uncle Han was gentle with him, helped him and understood him under all circumstances, and that is precisely why he does not intend to disgrace himself in front of his daughter, even if the price for it is too high. Thus, having agreed to the deal with the ghost, Sui Chen returns with the money to his companions. He addresses them politely and apologizes for keeping him waiting for so long. The guy tries to explain that he got the wrong card last time, so he'll go and pay the bill right now. but Yu Xuan says that someone else already paid it. Sui Chen only asks in surprise what the girl said and who could have paid for his bill. Yu Xuan angrily said that she didn't know that person, he just paid the bill and left. Before that, she told the guy in a commanding tone not to get on his nerves. To this, Sui Chen tells her not to look down on him, saying that he is rich and can afford to pay for a simple meal. The girl interrupts him and orders him to stop with all these tirades about wealth. She says she doesn't know what happened to Sui Chen all these years, but her father wanted him to come down to earth and live a simple, good life. To this, Yu Xuan added with a cold gaze that, obviously, this was not destined to happen yet. She and her friend leave the restaurant and say that from now on, Sui Chen must behave decently. Sui Chen recalls how he was almost always very unlucky, starting from his childhood, and he always knew it. He recalls an old-school memory in which his classmate won a rare game card while he was dealt an ordinary one. While thinking about why people would get what he wanted, he noticed a strange ability in himself other than his own bad luck. Every time Sui Chen is unlucky, the people around him become lucky in proportion to the level of his misfortune. So he mentions an incident when his mother came to him with great news about new clients in her company. That day, his mother noticed that Sui Chen was still sad despite such good news. She saw that the guy was holding something in his hands, some piece of paper, and was asking to show him what it was. At some point, she can't take it anymore and snatches the papers from her son's hands herself. This paper accepted the application for admission to the technical school, which surprised her, since her son dreamed of entering the university. To this, Sui Chen replies that he accidentally applied to another place, mentally preparing himself for a fight. His mother gives him a hard slap on the cheek, so hard that the boy can barely stand still. She says that the cycle repeats itself endlessly, that just when everything is going well for her, bad news comes from Sui Chen. The mother says that she can no longer endure this years-long torture and that the boy must stop torturing her in this way. And suddenly, Sui Chen wakes up from this nightmare in the bedroom of his new luxurious estate. He thinks about how disgusting and nightmarish this dream is, and how he does not want to remember these things from his life at all. Suddenly, he feels a finger touch his head from Carly's hand. The maid asks what's wrong. The guy, not expecting to see her so close this morning, throws his hand away and asks what it is. Afterwards, Carly comments that her master looks a little tired and asks if he would like something to eat, to which he responds approvingly. A few minutes later, Sui Chen is having breakfast and remarking on how delicious everything is. Carly claims that it is her job to put the dishes together for his meals, and he praises her skills. The girl then claims that she is Sui Chen's personal butler and maid, so he can turn to her for any reason, adding that he has a certificate in psychology. The guy opens his mouth to address her about his own problems, but something stops him. In the end, Sui Chen claims that it's nothing serious and none of this matters, turning away from his maid. At this moment, the maid suddenly jumps on her master and grabs him by the shoulders in a strange way. Sui Chen, not being able to resist the girl very well, asks what she is doing. With a strange look, Carly says that it's okay if the master doesn't want to tell her, adding that she will do everything in her power. This causes a certain fear and tension on Sui Chen's face, not understanding what is about to happen next. For some time, sounds could be heard from the master's bedroom that could easily be confused with something indecent. However, Carly simply gave Sui Chen a head massage and later asked if he felt better, which he answered in the affirmative. At some point, the guy asks the maid how many resources he has accumulated now. The butler lists the resources, which include 1% of the Galaxy Group's shares, a luxury estate, 4 properties in the Jianyang community, and 1 office building. Hearing this, Sui Chen thanked her and put on his jacket before leaving the bedroom. He could later be seen at the bulletin board in the Jianyang community, posting ads for his properties. In parallel with this activity, he thought that all his problems had only one root, and the root of all the problems for Sui Chen was the lack of money, which he thought about as he continued to post ads. Once he solves this main problem, all other problems will be solved at the same moment. The guy was thinking about how he didn't want to be just an average homeowner, what a bunch of them there were all over the city and all over the country. Suddenly, in front of him on the almost empty street, Sui Chen sees the guy in the dark jacket he saw in the restaurant. For a while, the figure simply stood with its head bowed, not uttering a word. Sui Chen decides to ask him what's wrong, thinking about how the guy scared him with his sudden appearance. The interlocutor says that he is glad to finally find him and introduces himself as the one who paid at the restaurant. To this, Sui Chen somewhat embarrassedly thanks the guy, almost expecting that it was this very man who paid for him. He asks the guy here to return his money, adding that he will definitely return everything. The other person, however, ignored this and said that he had been waiting for an opportunity to be alone with him. But he had not been able to do so because Sui-chen was always busy with someone. At this point, Sui-chen decides that this weirdo doesn't need money, but his body. The interlocutor says that he can't stand it anymore and quickly runs to the guy. Sui-chen meanwhile gets into a defensive stance and tells him not to come any closer than he is. Suddenly, he even decides to fall on his knees to beg for mercy for his body. However, for some unknown reason, the stranger did the same, falling to his knees right in front of him. In unison, the boys began to say different things. Sui-chen said that he did not like men, and the stranger called him the god of evil. The stranger claimed that he had been searching for him for a long time, passing through mountains and fires, through hard ground and mud, in order to reunite with him. When Sui-chen asks who is in front of him, the guy asks if he really doesn't remember him. The next moment, the stranger removes his hood and introduces himself as the younger brother of the god of evil Sui-chen, Mota. Memories take Motu to the Black Palace of the god of evil, where he hurries to deliver news to the deity. He rushes at super powerful speed through the dark halls full of black columns towards the deity of evil. Visibly agitated, Mota subsequently appears before the god, who sits on a black, spiked throne, and says that something very important has happened. The owner of all evil asks in a relaxed tone what exactly happened that was so important. Mota claims that he predicted the future not long ago, and on this occasion he found out that the other gods are preparing to impose sanctions on him. He says that this time the gods may be real, so he asks the teams to prepare an army to fight the gods. However, the owner of all evil, in an almost indifferent tone, refuses his younger brother, saying that it is not necessary. Mota only excitedly asks why it is not necessary, obviously not understanding his master's plans. This deity replies that the gods are already here, after which the dark walls of the palace collapse in golden light. They unanimously claimed that the end of the evil god was already incredibly close, proclaiming it like thunder from the heavens. The dark god places his hand on his younger brother's shoulder as a gesture of trust and blessing. He says that he trusts his subordinate, and that is why Mota must leave this place as soon as possible. The deity states that this battle is not a place to risk oneself. After this, the Dark Lord grows huge bat-like wings in preparation for his final battle. As he soars into the golden sky, he says that when he kills the gods, Mota will return for him. And just like that, he disappears into the golden light, to the despairing cries of his little brother. And this is how Mota ends this story, retelling it to Sui-chen and wiping away her tears with a white handkerchief. The guy adds that after the battle, the god of evil was driven out to Earth, and he secretly made his way here, and now, after hundreds of years, they are finally together. Sui-chen listened tensely at this time, not knowing what to do with this information, eventually deciding to ask about future plans. Mota says that, of course, first of all, Sui-chen must return and take revenge on the gods who placed him in such conditions. He says that his magic power barely works here, but that's hardly a problem with the great, bloodthirsty, almighty god of evil. However, in the middle of this speech, Mota noticed how his master climbed a tree after a cat stuck in the branches. Suddenly, Sui-chen hears a branch crunch beneath him and notices that it is barely holding him and the cat together. The next moment, he quite predictably falls along with the cat to the ground under a tree. The guy cheerfully lifts the animal and is happy that he was saved. A shocked Mota at this time says that his master is hardly doing what he should be doing. Sui-chen subsequently releases the cat and explains that no matter who he was in his past life, he is now a simple man who is simply 10,000 times less lucky than others. He goes on to say that he must earn virtue points to get rid of misfortunes and live a good life, and that he has nothing to do with gods and revenge. A frankly surprised Mota says that this is a lie and he knows exactly who is in front of him. The guy claims that Sui-chen smells like the god of evil and asks irritably how the god of evil he has known for so long can think about some glasses. Sui-chen understands this smell as the presence of evil energy and asks about it, not understanding how he cannot see it. At this point, Mota reminds the young man that his divine eye can see all things in the world. Nothing had ever been able to escape his sight, however, because his magic was suppressed in this world. He lost the ability to see the future. After thinking about it more carefully, Sui-chen decides to ask if Mota sees the ghost of the system. This ghost is reflected in the guy's eye, covered with a diamond-shaped magic sign. However, Mota replies that he does not see any ghosts of the system, but his manner of speech arouses certain suspicions in Sui-chen. He turns to the system and says that saving the kitten should give him 0.1% of his virtues. Sui-chen says he noticed this when he was helping Li Hanyi and asks if he really needs to do good deeds to gain virtue, to which the ghost responds approvingly. The guy starts shaking the ghost, asking why he didn't tell him about this before, but he replies that Sui-chen just didn't ask. He decides with great enthusiasm that if this is so, then he should not waste time and start earning points now. Meanwhile, Moda was sitting not far from them, completely depressed, which finally attracted Sui-chen's attention. The god's younger brother thought about how bad it was if the gods were so cruel that they turned the evil god into a reincarnation of a fool. He eventually comes to the conclusion that Sui-chen has simply lost his memories of his life as an evil god, and he must remind him of it. So Moda decides to take his now older brother to a certain place where the memories of the god of evil will be revealed. Sui-chen just looked at the place this guy had brought him to in surprise. It was a strip bar where Moda ordered the management to take out all his girls, saying that he would take care of everything himself. He says money is not an issue as long as the staff can provide adequate service to Sui-chen. The guy himself thought that Moda was obviously a frequent guest in such places, for some reason tying this to his height. Subsequently, 7 different girls with different types of appearance appeared on stage, all 7 of them doing interesting erotic poses. Their leader ordered them to line up and then told them to do everything they had learned throughout their lives. Instantly, these girls surrounded Sui-chen, flirting with him and pinning him in different places. Moda watched with satisfaction as the guy tried to fight off the girls. He thought with a grin that such actions should refresh the memory of his master and elder brother. After some time, Sui-chen was completely exhausted and immobilized by the actions of the girls caused by Moda. There were 4 girls left near him, and the visitors of this bar were discussing him with great enthusiasm. Suddenly, a guy in his 30s turns his attention to the table where Sui-chen is sitting, surrounded by the establishment's female employees. He suddenly recognizes the guy and asks if it is really Sui-chen in front of him with a big smile on his face. The exhausted boy begins to remember this boy, eventually remembering the name Zhou Ping. Later, the 2 guys drank to each other's health and talked about their lives. This guy was very nice to Sui-chen at school and even protected him from bullying. He said that he would soon be married. This surprised the guy, who didn't understand why an almost married man was going to such establishments. Zhou Ping said that he had some difficulties in his life and came to this club to drown his sorrows. He adds to this that he has never ordered girls, so in this regard he is without sin. Sui-chen decides to ask about the guy's problems. Zhou Ping says she wants to make her wedding more elegant and book a luxury car, but rental bureaucracy makes the process impossible. Sui-chen understands that the situation really requires a lot of different preparations and sympathizes with his friend. So he decides to offer to lend his own red Ferrari for Zhou Ping's wedding. Sui-chen hands over the keys and his friend thinks he's joking because how could he have a Ferrari? However, upon seeing the keys, Zhou Ping's eyes almost jumped out of his head from such shock. The guy hugs Sui-chen and calls him his lucky angel, and the system gives a notification of an additional 0.5% of virtues for helping a friend. He smiles contentedly, thinking about how he helped his friend and got points at the same time. However, suddenly the police burst into this strip bar and order everyone gathered to put their hands behind their heads. Next, they order you not to make any unnecessary movements and to sit on the floor with your heads bowed. 2 police officers spot Zhou Ping and Sui-chen and claim that they are involved in sex crimes and trafficking and therefore need to be taken to the police station. And so the action moves to the police station, from which different people must be picked up by their acquaintances. Zhou Ping was followed by his future wife, and Sui-chen was followed by his butler and maid Carly. Zhou's wife grabs her fiancé by the ear and pulls him home, and he tells his friend not to forget to come to the wedding. Sui-chen meanwhile asks Carly where Moda disappeared to, but she doesn't know who he's talking about, so the guy tells her to forget about it. From around the corner of the street, you can see Moda's silhouette, who is keeping a close eye on his older brother. He then walks deeper into the alley, as if expecting someone to appear in the darkness. Moda turns to someone and tells him not to be so cunning and finally come out to him. His divine eye glows red, and behind him appears the ghost of the system in typical blue colors. The ghost chuckles and notes out loud that Moda can see him. The next moment, a whole explosion of dark energy seems to occur around the system. This dark energy gradually approaches Moda and tries to absorb him in its blackness. However, suddenly in a dark alley you can see a light rushing for a few seconds from the guy. After that, this light turned into a powerful purple barrier, which was a magical defense against such energy. Holding this barrier, Moda says that a simple system cannot have such powers, adding that the ghost reminds him incredibly of the old god of evil. The ghost, with his ever-present smile, says that the boy shouldn't be so nervous. Moda angrily asks who this ghost is and why he hides himself from the god of evil. At that very moment, the transparent blue matter from which the ghost of the system seemed to be formed disintegrated into the darkness of black energy. A real god of evil appeared before Moda with a smile on his face and introduced himself as such a god. Sometime after these events, Jo Ping's wedding took place in the beautiful neo-Gothic chapel. The priest asked the brides if they were ready to get married, to which they unanimously responded that they were ready. Next, he talks about being together forever, going through life holding hands and growing old together. And this time the brides answered in unison that they agreed. Smiling at each other, the priest holds out a document to the couple, calling it a happiness agreement, and asks them to leave their fingerprints on it. Meanwhile, in the same spirit, the signing of the lease agreement between Sui Chen and Li Hanyi takes place. The girl is glad to get this whole thing over with, saying that sooner or later she would have gotten tired of her mother calling her about it. The ghost of the system informs Sui Chen that helping his girlfriend with rent has caused his virtue level to increase by 0.5%. While the guy is thinking about marriage, Li Hanyi claims that even though the house belongs to the guy, he still can't go into her room, to which he replies that he didn't want to. Later, the girl, surprised, admits that Sui Chen actually has real estate, to which he is ready to start praising himself, but is abruptly interrupted. Li Hanyi says she didn't expect the guy's boss to be so nice that he would not only give him a car, but also a whole house. Thinking about how he is not trustworthy, Sui Chen decides to ask why she rents an entire house for one person. She explains that it wasn't that she wanted to rent an entire house, but she needed to find a place to live in the area around his school. When it came to payment, the girl admitted that she only received 20,000 yuan, and before that, she still had to help her family financially in every possible way. Sui Chen, hearing this, thinks that perhaps if it weren't for the system, his entire past life would have been spent in simple and bitter remorse. Suddenly, he shouts at Li Hanyi and says that they have to go somewhere. After some time, closer to dusk, they find themselves on the nearest beach. The girl runs carefree on the sand, while Sui Chen walks more reservedly. Li Hanyi runs along the edges of the water with bare feet, talking about how cool and nice it is. Sui Chen, meanwhile, just walks calmly, watching his companion. The girl tried to find a simple, almost childish perception of things in the surrounding world and simply enjoy it. Li Hanyi laughed frankly and innocently, recovering from the endless weeks of work. Sui Chen watched this calmly and thought that he was seeing something truly beautiful. However, as soon as he said this, his companion threw water in his face. Li Hanyi asked what he was talking about, to which the guy made excuses that he was thinking about the sea and the sun. With a proud posture and a smile on her face, the girl confidently said that these words were a lie. She later recalls that Sui Chen said at the alumni meeting that he works for Galaxy Group, which he confirms the next moment. The girl says that she still works there, so they must be colleagues, and asks where exactly the guy works, to which he awkwardly says about the head office. Li Hanyi says with some disappointment that she thought she finally had a worthy employee. When Sui Chen asks what she means by this, the girl tells him not to worry about it too much. Meanwhile, a ghost appeared in front of the guy at a very inopportune moment, claiming to have brought a new task for the system. This task was a relatively easy solution to Li Hanyi's problems, which made Sui Chen incredibly happy. The ghost of the system noted that the task was very difficult, so for his failure the guy would be fined and lose a large number of virtue points. Ghost argues that this is both a risk and an opportunity, comparing it to a bicycle that can become a motorcycle. Sui Chen adds that it can also turn into a stretcher. To this, the system says that there is nothing to be afraid of. Since he is always here and is ready to help for a certain price, the guy claims that he will not do something like this again. Sui Chen thinks that the risk is usually small, but the amount is quite large. And wouldn't it make things worse for him if he were to fail even one task? Meanwhile, on the road nearby, someone in a red car was shouting at him to just suck it up and accept it. It was Moda who kept shouting that the evil god must take over the system's task no matter what. He argued that Sui Chen should believe in himself and he could do anything, also offering his own help. As he drove away in the car, Moda thought about how the system couldn't be trusted and how exactly to help the guy. Of course, this doesn't fit into the ghost of the system's plans, so he prepares for action with a displeased expression on his face. Moda noticed that something was about to happen either to him or to his car and prepared himself for action as soon as he could. The ghost simply snapped his own transparent blue fingers and ended Moda's interference in his affairs, at least for now. A large truck appeared in front of the red car, which for an ordinary person would definitely be equal to death, and so the two cars collided, causing a huge explosion with a lot of black smoke. Observing this, Sui-chen claims that he does not wish to undergo the proposed task. The ghost just smiled and said that nothing could be done about it. Sui-chen decides to return to his companion and tell her that they must go now. However, the girl stood still and did not respond to the guy's words, so he called out to her again. Lee Hanai finally looked towards her companion with a sad expression, and her face wet with tears. At this moment, Sui-chen realized that he didn't care about the task or virtue. He only wanted to help this girl. Lee Hani recalls one of a number of bad moments in her own life, when another figure was surrounded by a crowd of various journalists. This girl was asked about her secret to success as a model working for Galax Group, with all the typical journalistic questions. Lee Hani herself only watched this girl from the shadows with her head bowed and thought. She thought wearily that this place of a popular model should belong to her. In her department, meanwhile, the workers were discussing the fact that there was little point in looking great unless it was accompanied by the ability to present yourself. One of the workers asked to speak more quietly, but the most active girl says that she did not name anyone in particular, claiming that anyone could get a job. A man suddenly bursts into this conversation, claiming that Ms. Lee had been waiting for some opportunity for a long time, but for some reason gave the position to someone else. Suddenly, the worker felt a dark aura and visibly tensed up, waiting for the consequences of the words spoken. Indeed, Lee Han-yi appeared behind the most active purple-haired worker and asked what they were talking about during work hours. The girl tried to somehow get out of this awkward situation and justify herself, but was abruptly interrupted. Lee Han-yi said that if workers really want to talk, they can do so outside of working hours. Otherwise, they will be forced to work extra hours. One of the workers tells the girl that Miss Jung is waiting for her, so she leaves her subordinates. The scolded girl is especially angry at Lee Han-yi, thinking of her as a pompous monster. Meanwhile, Miss Jung is waiting for her subordinate in the office, drinking coffee from a red cup. As soon as Lee Han-yi enters her office, she immediately says that although the position that was supposed to be handed over now belongs to someone else, she hopes that this has not been taken to heart. The girl says that she understands and has no problem with the fact that she is not suitable for certain vacancies due to insufficient skills. To this, Miss Jang, with a slight polite smile, asserts that she is glad that her subordinate thinks so. She goes on to say that a new project has emerged, connected to the main company Galaxy Group, which is quite specific and complex, and therefore not many are ready to take it on. Miss Jung hands a pile of papers towards Lee Han-yi and says that the girl is better suited to handle this project than anyone else. At one point, Lee Han-yi couldn't believe that such an opportunity had become available to her, so she was almost speechless. In the end, she promises to definitely live up to her boss's expectations, to which she tells her to set up a meeting as soon as she has reviewed the documents. Lee Han-yi immediately walks out of the office and tells her subordinate Xiao Li to call everyone in the department for an emergency meeting. When she hears that it is already the end of the working day, she insists that the meeting be held today. Finally, everyone gathered in the conference room and Lee Han-yi began his presentation regarding the new project. However, most workers only complain tiredly and irritably that it is already 7 o'clock and they are still at work. One of them even directly addresses Ms. Lee and tells her to save her strength, asking who she is doing all this for. The girl annoyedly says that she is only doing her job according to the minimum work ethic, while a message notification from Sui-chen appears on the screen. Workers notice this with a certain tension and confusion about how to react correctly. Lee Han-yi herself hears a bunch of notification sounds and decides to see what it is. She eventually sees Sui-chen on the presentation screen writing her a message about endocrine disruption due to stress. Seeing all this, the subordinate workers began to mock the girl, saying that she had these violations because she worked too much. In the end, Lee Han-yi runs out to the toilet in a furious and embarrassed manner and loudly slams the toilet stall door. The girl writes to Sui-chen about why the hell he is sending these messages, to which he replies that he wanted to take care of her, but did not know what exactly was bothering her. The girl replies that she doesn't need his care and adds him to the blacklist, while the guy has already managed to write a bunch of messages with advice for all occasions. Suddenly, Lee Han-yi hears someone else in the toilet talking about something. It was the workers who noticed her bag and discussed how it was most likely a fake. After that, they laugh at the bag and leave, preparing for dinner, which should be delivered soon. And only after that, Lee Han-yi tiredly and with a sad expression on her face walked out of the toilet stall. Subsequently, it goes to a stop illuminated by a single lamp and where there was no longer a single person. The girl wearily realized that she wouldn't be able to catch a taxi that easily and get home. Lee Hani looked at her bag, wondering if it was really a fake, considering that the store had told her it was completely original. In the end, she decides to buy a new one later, but for now she thinks about how to get home. Suddenly, a familiar red Ferrari drives past the girl and stops, scaring her a little. Sui Chen, while driving, calls her a beautiful lady and invites her to get into the car. Lee Hani angrily asks why he can't drive normally considering it's his boss's car. With a slightly tense expression, Sui Chen says that he is worried about the girl, and that is why he is here. However, Lee Hani claims that she doesn't care and won't get into that car even if she has to die. Then Sui Chen offers to treat her to dinner at any restaurant the girl chooses. Lee Hani didn't say a word, but her stomach betrayed her by roaring loudly throughout the entire stop. She eventually agrees to the proposal, but claims that it is only because she wanted to. At this point, Sui Chen opens the car door and invites the girl to get in. Lee Hani, given the choice of where to go, decided that they should visit a market with various traditional foods. She was fascinated by different things and wanted to taste everything. Looking at some seafood, the next thing the girl noticed was some kind of pasta with a thick red sauce, which also looked delicious to her. Sui Chen was a little surprised by the choice, claiming he thought girls would prefer trendy, Michelin-starred establishments. To this, Lee Hani replies that he doesn't think street food is bad and doesn't even see much of a difference between street food and fine dining. Holding a glass of broth with meat and vegetables stuck on sticks, the girl adds that there is no such thing as a free lunch. She says that Sui Chen's boss is very kind to him, but the guy also had to work hard for him, so she takes care of his wallet in this way. To this, he awkwardly responds to the girl, thanking her for caring for him. Suddenly, a large, muscular man walks past them, and Sui Chen pulls Lee Hani closer to him, telling her to be careful. The girl perceives this as a certain way of flirting, to which he says that he is just helping as a friend and their friendship is pure and innocent. Lee Hani is relieved by these words and asks him to buy her a cup of milk tea, to which Sui Chen agrees. So the guy went to the line for tea. While not far from this place, a man could be heard praising his goods. The girl heard that they were talking about original Louis Vuitton bags, sold at very attractive discounts. The man with pink hair and an extravagant mustache selling the bags claimed it was a bargain not to be missed. Lee Hani is surprised by how many different styles of bags there are on the counter, to which the salesperson says they have all the latest items. The girl decides to ask about a small blue bag with a gold clasp, which looked a bit like a lock. The seller claims that this style of bag now costs only $8,000, despite the fact that the plate in front of the bag said $20,000. Lee Hani thinks about how much she will suffer financially over the next month if she buys this bag. Eventually, she decides that it is an acceptable price for her and says that she will take the bag to the delight of the seller. However, Sui Chen, who had already brought milk tea, suddenly intervenes in this conversation, asking again about the price of the original Louis Vuitton bag. The seller immediately reacts with irritation, claiming that their bags are indeed original, adding that there is no point in talking about them if you don't know anything. Sui Chen tells the man not to be so angry, simply stating that he heard about Louis Vuitton's policy on stores selling their goods without authorization. He adds that some shops have even lost all their money due to the payments, asking how he will be able to sell these bags for $8,000. Frightened by such threatening phrases, the seller decides to drop the price to 800 yuan per bag, to which Sui Chen says that 80 is acceptable. The system marks this as a special task and rewards the guy with another 0.5% of virtues. Sui Chen pays for the bag and gives it to Lee Hani along with the tea, for which he thanks him, a little surprised. Later, the guy says that she shouldn't go with such a bag in a fashionable company like Galaxy Group, offering to send the original later. However, the girl modestly and confidently says that she will take this particular bag because she likes it. This interaction and the thoughts about what it might mean made Sui Chen feel a little awkward. Lee Hani, of course, immediately tells him not to think anything like that, and that she just likes the bag, to which he replies that he thought maybe she liked him. The girl is somewhat irritated and embarrassed, claiming that she can't like him and says that they should go. After some time, Sui Chen and Lee Hani went back to their homes without any major incidents. The guy had already texted her about how the evening had gone, thinking he had done his job and made her happy. However, Lee Hani didn't respond for half an hour, so he simply lazily lay on his own bed. Eventually, the guy thinks that maybe the girl is very busy and that is why she is not responding to his message. Later, she writes that the evening went as usual and wishes good night, asking not to write to her since she is busy. This greatly excites Sui Chen, who thought that they had a wonderful atmospheric promenade together. The ghost of the system says that if the task is not completed, then the problems are not solved, to which the guy irritably claims that it is not that simple. The ghost claims that he can easily help solve problems with only 2% of the virtue level. Sui Chen calls him a traitor. Suddenly, the guy hears someone knocking quite loudly and articulately on his bedroom window. In the window that opens, Sui Chen sees Motu, who claims to have brought information about Galaxy Group and Li Hanyi's problems that may be related to this company. The ghost of the system watches the newcomer and sends him a telepathic message that he is talking too much. The ghost seems to ask the boy who he is talking to, accompanied by Mota's frightened expression. The evil god's younger brother says that it's time for him to go, then jumps out of the window, much to Sui Chen's dismay. The next moment, as soon as Mota climbed out of the window, the ghost took the form of the owner of all evil with his dark aura. With a smile on his face, the god claimed that he would let him go, ordering him not to meddle in other people's affairs. After this, Mota jumped from the balcony where the ghost was still standing, quickly finding himself on the ground. Then he ran away, thinking that in addition to the system, there was also a maid in this house, leaving everything to Sui Chen. At that moment, the butler Carly knocks on the door of the bedroom and tells the guy that they have to go to the Galaxy Group headquarters. She enters the room and bows before the master, who asks why this is so sudden. The maid claims to have received 2 pieces of news. The first being that Sui Chen has been given his position as head of the company's entertainment department. The second piece of news, she said, is who within the company wants to seize power. Meanwhile, a loud party was taking place in one of the Galaxy Group offices, where employees were drinking a variety of alcoholic beverages. One of the workers, pouring drinks into glasses and goblets, claimed that they would not go home today without resting. However, before raising their glasses, another worker suggests that they first hear out Mr. Zhu. Mr. Zhu Kai, the acting head of the entertainment department, said that even though he is the boss today, his subordinates can do whatever they want without much formality. Liu Cheng, the head of the company, even calls Zhu Kai the real head of the headquarters and the entire Galaxy Group, adding that they could not have reached such heights without him. The man raises his glass as a gesture of gratitude and thanks him for approving the new project, to which Zhu Kai says that they are all equal members of the same family. Liu Cheng leans towards the entertainment department head's ear and claims that he has a gift and asks him to accept it. As soon as Zhu Kai gives his consent, the head of the company looks at the door of the hall and orders someone to enter. Instantly, a girl in a black dress and white high heels entered the room, somewhat hesitantly. She addressed Zhu Kai in a polite manner, and he called her our little star. Instantly, the girl was on the director's lap, saying that she would serve him well today and pouring wine. However, amidst such merriment, one could also find several people in a rather depressed mood. One of these people was Zhang Dashan, one of the vice presidents of Galaxy Group, who was tensely observing everything around him. Eventually, he approaches Zhu Kai and says that he will also drink to him, watching him flirt with the girl given to him by the head of the company. The vice president talks about how the artists in his department need resources, arguing that without them they simply won't survive. Zhang Dashan asked for generosity, which greatly irritated Zhu Kai during the big party. Finally, the director, in a stern tone, points to a bottle of some strong alcohol and states that he gives his word if the vice president can drink the whole bottle. To this, Zhang Dashan says that he does not drink very well and asks that it could be beer or just one glass of the same alcohol. To this, Zhu Kai irritably repeats that he will give his word only if he drinks a whole bottle of strong alcohol. To this he adds that if he tells him to drink this, then he should either drink it or get out. Finally, Zhang Dashan decides to take this action and picks up the bottle of strange alcohol and starts drinking it in one go. Zhu Kai and his subordinates watch this, not believing that anyone would dare to do such a thing. However, after just a few seconds, the vice president felt ill, and the alcohol went in the opposite direction. Zhang Dashan throws the bottle away and vomits violently on the floor, to the excited cries of his subordinates. Seeing this as the vice president's defeat in the dispute, Zhu Kai orders him to clean up after him, while he himself leaves the crowd with the girl for more private activities. Sometime later, in a toilet stall, the acting director and the girl were getting dressed after some unspecified intimate actions. Suddenly, Zhu Kai hears that someone is calling him and is very surprised by this fact. Picking up the phone, the man, in a calm, reserved tone, orders his interlocutor to speak. The next moment, Zhu Kai loses this calm and restraint due to the news he received and says that he will soon arrive at a certain place. Meanwhile, in one of the Galaxy Group offices, the atmosphere was completely different, much more worthy of a large company. Sui Chen sat in the conference room in the chair of the company's entertainment department director, accompanied by his butler Carly and another man. It was Mr. Lu Feng, the acting director of Galaxy Group, who claimed that in just a little while, Zhu Kai would be there. And he does indeed appear, dramatically slamming the door and asking about the one who dared to take his place, telling him to come out to him if he wants to die. Sui Chen and Carly watched as Zhu Kai spoke about how much he had contributed to the company and how he wanted to see who could replace him. Lu Feng finally breaks down and tells him to shut up in front of Sui Chen. To this, Zhu Kai haughtily replies that he does not know of any important person with such a name. At this point, Carly turns to Mr. Lu Feng, claiming that when her master is not in the company, there is complete chaos here. After that, the butler pointedly pointed at Sui Chen and said that the director of the entertainment department had already been decided, but her master did not take the position due to the suspension of the project. At this moment, Zhu Kai experiences a terrible shock upon learning all this information. Carly continues to talk about how a simple company agent dares to disagree with the appointment of his management, even gently threatening Lu Feng. At this moment, Zhu Kai falls to his knees and begins to beg for forgiveness and understanding. He expresses hope that Sui Chen can forgive him if he has offended him in any way. The new entertainment director says he doesn't need these formalities and asks what else Zhu Kai wanted to do, but he interrupts. The company's agent claims that he has a unique ability to select artists, so he wants to invite him to dinner on the weekend and prepare a gift. Zhu Kai expresses hope that the director will agree, but the director immediately orders him to forget, saying that he is not interested. Sui Chen leaves with Carly, who notes that the quality of the company's management is very poor, for which Lu Feng apologizes, promising to issue reprimands. Zhu Kai only thinks about how he was so humiliated without being able to respond. The next day, Li Hanyi presents his new project in front of the Galaxy Group headquarters, saying that the current strategy allows the company to improve the training of artists. Claiming that all of this requires support from the company's headquarters, she ends her presentation and bows to the audience. At a certain point, she expects an indifferent reaction, or perhaps even the condemnation to which she was accustomed in the previous department. However, to Li Hanyi's surprise and happiness, most of those present thought the presentation was brilliant and responded with applause at its conclusion. The girl subsequently rested from this exhaustion on a white sofa, complaining of the intense heat. Miss Jiang suddenly comes up to her with a bottle of water and says that she needs to drink some water. The woman says she is very pleased with Li Hanyi's performance, claiming that the head office has agreed to invest more in their department. At a certain point, Miss Jiang smiles somewhat ominously, as if preparing for some action. The director asks the girl if she still wants to work as an operator, but she only asks again, not understanding the question. Miss Jiang said she was just asking because Li Hanyi had done a brilliant job in her leadership position. To this, the girl answers somewhat modestly and awkwardly. She always dreamed of being a star, to be the center of attention of many. The director says that in that case, she decided to recommend Li Hanyi for a modeling position for one of the company's brands. Hearing this, the girl could not recover from the shock and simply did not know how to thank Mrs. Jiang. The director advises her not to worry too much, saying that there is a small price to pay to make her dream come true. Li Hanyi immediately asks what price exactly she is talking about, completely not understanding what the woman is getting at. Miss Jiang says that at best it is just a meal and a chat with important investors, which requires some emotional preparation. The girl begins to suspect something about this, so she asks directly if this is some kind of trick. The director says that dinner and conversation is just a way to get to know investors better and gain their trust, and with it, their money. Seeing the girl hesitant, Ms. Jiang decides to press her by recalling Li Xin, who took Li Hanyi's place in the past, claiming that she knew more about all this. The woman says it is hardly possible for a young woman to get something without offering something in return. The director says that everyone in this business listens to the law, asking if Li Hanyi can really drink well. To this, the girl, with her head bowed, replied that she had never lost to anyone in a contest of who would get drunk faster. To this, Li Hanyi adds that if this is all Ms. Jiang wants to tell her, she believes her. Meanwhile, in his new office, Sui Chen, accompanied by Carly, spoke to his subordinates apologizing for making them work late on Saturday. Dvoretskaya says that this is her master's first day at work, so she hopes for cooperation from her subordinates and with him as well. Sui Chen tells the girl to change out of her maid uniform, to which she playfully replies that she thought he liked it. Finally, after finishing this conversation, Carly decides to finally introduce the directors of the department that Sui Chen will be heading. The first was Mr. Chai, who became the head of the directing department and immediately began to praise the beauty of his new boss. Next up was Director Ma, who works in the production department and also comments on the new manager's attractiveness, to which Sui Chen politely thanks her. He asks Carly who the head of the talent department is, to which Carly replies that he is Ju Kai, the man he saw yesterday. Dvoretskaya says that he probably didn't report anything about himself because of what happened yesterday, adding that he is quite useful to the department. Sui Chen says he understands the situation and ends the meeting, adding that he will guide Carly, after which he leaves the office. The guy at this time sits in his chair and thinks about what torture it is to earn money, dreaming of a simple transfer of percentages of virtues into material goods. Thinking about working late, Sui Chen thinks of Li Hanyi and wonders what the girl is doing now, dismissing theories about working overtime. Meanwhile, the girl prepares to present herself to investors from the head office and puts on makeup. She is wearing an evening blue dress with a deep neckline and a slit at the leg, and she doesn't think this look is too sexy. Suddenly, Li Hanyi receives a call and subsequently a message from Sui Chen, who asks what she is doing now. The girl thinks that the guy obviously has nothing else to write to her. At one point, Li Hanyi thinks about taking a photo of herself in this dress and sending it to Sui Chen. However, immediately after this, she rejects this idea due to her extreme shyness. Outside her house, Mrs. Zhang was waiting on the street and asking if the girl was ready, claiming that it was time for them to go, to which she said that she was already coming down. After some time, the girl arrives in a luxury car at a majestic and luxurious building in neoclassical style. After getting out of the car, Li Hanyi couldn't believe her eyes. And because everything around her was real, with Ms. Zhang's support, the girl walked along the red carpet, where there were many cameramen and journalists. Li Hanyi made an elegant curtsy to the audience, holding up her sparkling dress. At the same time, the girl thought that her old dream of being in the center of attention was finally coming true. One of the photographers called out to Li Hanyi by name, asking him to look into his camera and come closer. As soon as she approached, the guy called it the perfect moment and took a beautiful photo. Li Hanyi smiled lightly and waved her hand in greeting. Her entire figure seemed to glow with happiness. In the crowd near this photographer stood the head of the talent department, Mr. Zhu Kai, smiling somewhat ominously. Already in the restaurant of this luxury complex, Ms. Zhang invites Li Hanyi to introduce herself to all the guests. The girl leans over and introduces herself as the head of the advertising department at Galaxy Group, and also a contract model. The guests invite her to sit next to them at a table, and one of the artists compliments Li Hanyi on her body. One of the guests extends his hand to the girl and, calling her Madam, says that he is pleased to meet her. This guest was Mr. Ren Kai, whom the girl immediately recognized as the actor and star of the film. Meanwhile, Director Zhang took out a bottle that looked suspiciously like the one Zhu Kai had in his office and poured a certain liquid from it into glasses. While pouring this drink and adding the white pill, the woman watched her subordinate Li Hanyi with a certain sinister expression. After this, the director brings this glass to the girl and says that they should drink to Mr. Ren. Zhu Kai, who was sitting next to her at that table, said that it was better not to drink too much, to which Li Hanyi replied that she could drink a lot. Hearing this, the head of the talent department thought that since she could drink a lot, she should drink more. However, as soon as the girl drank the glass poured by the director, she felt as if she was losing consciousness. People around noticed this. Mrs. Zhang claimed that she was probably a little drunk, but Zhu Kai said that he would help her rest. After some time, the girl was moved to one of the hotel rooms in this building, and one could hear someone calling her. Zhu Kai saw that it was Sui Chen's call and hung up without further ado. The man was somewhat surprised by the fact that Li Hanyi knew his current boss. He told her about it, but the girl was half conscious from the drink the director gave her. Zhu Kai, undressing and climbing on top of the girl, says that he wanted to give Li Hanyi to his current boss. He continued, arguing that since he didn't want her, he would have to take care of her himself. Suddenly, a strange black fog appears in the room in small, thick clouds, distracting the man. Zhu Kai wonders where this fog could come from and suggests that it might be due to the hotel's poor air circulation system. The man, somewhat tensely and with a certain lack of understanding of what is happening, even slight fear, decides to open the curtains to let out the fog. Suddenly, the light from the windows, which shouldn't be there at this time, knocks him off his feet like some kind of magical attack. Zhu Kai falls onto the bed and hits his head on Li Hanyi's neatly folded knees. The next moment, he feels the touch of the girl's hands on his cheeks. which frightens him with its unexpectedness. It is especially scary to understand that the girl should not have the strength for such gestures in her state, so the man looks up, where she should be. Zhu Kai sees the terrifying figure of Li Hanyi with a demonic smile and black spots instead of eyes. Seeing this, the man instantly takes off running and flees the hotel room, forgetting why he was even there. Surprisingly, Zhu Kai finds himself in some elevator in his underwear and thinks about what happened to him. Suddenly there was a sound, which is usually heard when an elevator opens, and the man waited in fear to see what else he might see today. He sees before him the silhouette of a woman in a white coat and with a short black hairdo, but is not yet able to recognize her. Zhu Kai eventually realizes that it is Director Zhang and greets her, saying that she is just in time. The man panics and tells her that Li Hanyi is a ghost, a real evil and horror that he never thought he would see. Meanwhile, Director Zhang says in a dark tone that she is a gift. Zhu Kai doesn't understand what this means, so he asks again. Still scared after what he saw, the woman keeps repeating that she is a gift. Her expression looks indifferent, almost dead. The next moment, her head seemed to fall off her body, as if chopped off by the thin, sharp blade of a large axe. This head falls to the floor, and turns into a black ball, bouncing off the floor like a soccer ball. Zhu Kai watches this action in fear, unable to even move from shock and horror. Eventually, the ball turns a bright orange color, an eye with black liquid flowing out of it, and a smile similar to Li Hanyi's. The ball kept saying that it was a gift, and eventually the man lost consciousness out of fear and his pants suddenly became wet. From such a great shock, Zhu Kai has a fit, and foam starts coming out of his mouth. The director and the man lay on the floor of the open elevator, while the bullet continued to speak of the gift. Suddenly, a human hand appeared on the elevator doors, surrounded by a bunch of dark energy in the form of black smoke. The man, shrouded in some kind of black smoke, asked with an indifferent expression whether those present liked the gift. The next moment, he begins to laugh and takes the form of the true god of evil, the ruler of all darkness. About half an hour ago, Sui Chen reacted angrily and excitedly to the fact that Li Hanyi was at Zhu Kai's dinner party. The guy irritably asks the ghost why he didn't tell him about this earlier, to which he replies that he didn't ask, and besides, he didn't even go to this dinner. Sui Chen tries to call but can't get through, worriedly thinking that the girl has never dropped calls before. The ghost, meanwhile, said that it was possible that Li Hanyi was in some guy's bed on drugs, adding that if he was as rich as Zhu Kai, then it might even be of his own free will. At this, Sui Chen angrily grabs the ghost of the system and stretches its mouth, ordering it to close it. The ghost says he's never seen the guy so angry, telling him to hurry up and trade his percentage of virtues for help. Sui Chen calls him a swindler and tells him not to even try to deceive him, to which he shrugs and claims that then the guy will have to figure it out on his own. After a pause and with threats of murder, the guy stretches the mouth of the ghost of the system again. The ghost offers 1% of his true powers for 30 minutes in exchange for 10% of his virtues, to which Sui Chen agrees. The system makes the deal valid and takes 10% of the guy's virtues instantly. Sui Chen is suddenly enveloped in clouds of dark energy, like black smoke and fog, his thoughts telling him to enjoy it as his own power. The next moment, the guy's image itself changes to the figure of a true god of evil. Horns grow and cracks appear on his face. And it was precisely because of this power that all those nightmares that Zhu Kai saw happened. Now, after half an hour, Sui Chen's abilities disappeared and everything became as usual. The guy returns to his old form, happy with the result of his agreement with the system. The ghost asks if everything is really necessary and if the guy suddenly didn't kill Zhu Kai along with the director, to which he replies that they didn't commit a crime worthy of death. Sui Chen believes that they just needed to be given a certain lesson, and that would be the end of any possible questions with them. After some time, the guy and the system find the hotel room where Li Hanyi was and immediately calls out to the girl and asks if she is okay. Li Hanyi is still lying on the bed in her blue shiny dress, half conscious and with her cheeks deeply red. The guy talks about how good it is that they managed to do all this before Zhu Kai did anything to the girl, to which the ghost says that he can do anything he can think of. Sui Chen calls out to Li Hanyi once again, telling her to get up and rescue her from this place. Suddenly, his gaze lingers a little too long on the deep neckline of the girl's luxurious dress. The boy awkwardly turns away, thinking about how defenseless Li Hanyi is in this situation. Suddenly, the girl seemed to come into a semi-conscious state and placed her hands on Sui Chen's face. Li Hanyi, with a tired expression on her face, says that she is very hot and thirsty. The guy himself notices this inflammation, which has accompanied him from the moment he entered this room. The ghost notices a small pink bottle from which the smell spread throughout the room and identifies it as an aphrodisiac. The system is playfully thinking about how it can add a little more fire to the tool, and the next ghost does just that, increasing the smell and power of the aphrodisiac, causing it to take over the entire room. Suichin and Lee Hanyi, who had been very close to each other before, were now in a very dangerous situation. The boy's cheeks turn red and it becomes much more difficult for him to breathe from the smell that permeates everywhere. The ghost was right behind him at this time, telling him to follow his instincts and desires, and immediately after this message, the guy and the girl join their lips in a kiss. Suichin held her waist as she did this, while Lee Hanyi seemed to be trying to say something. However, when the kiss ended, she only slowly said the guy's name. Suichin covers his face with his hand and says that he cannot and should not do this. Lee Hanyi interrupts his doubts and, getting up from the bed, returns his kiss. When the kiss ended, the girl claimed that it was just a dream and they had nothing to fear. Hearing this, he seems to have his desire and kisses Lee Hanyi again, holding her shoulders. Within seconds, they fall on the bed and begin to make passionate love. So passionately, in fact, that both of their belongings were flying around the room towards the ghost of the system. And so he smiles and says not to look at him like that and quickly leaves the room, disappearing into thin air. Sometime later, Suichin wakes up in a hotel room with a headache and no idea what happened. Eventually, he comes to the conclusion that he probably just had an erotic dream. Suddenly, the guy hears the ghost of the system playfully and somewhat mockingly calling out to him. Suichin sees the ghost lying in the same bed with him and asks him how good they had a time last night. The guy asks what the hell the ghost is doing and moves away from him deeper into the bed. Suddenly, he feels some kind of barrier and notices that Lee Hanyi is also sleeping in bed with him. The tense Suichin sweated profusely and thought about why she was lying here, coming to the conclusion that his dream was reality. The guy starts to panic and scream about how this could even happen, to which the ghost replies that he doesn't know. The next moment, the ghost's face becomes more creepy and he says that he does not understand why Suichin is so disappointed, comparing women in his tirade to food and drink, to needs. Hearing these words, the guy tensed up even more and asked again what he said. He eventually comes to the conclusion that the ghost is the real reason for what happened last night. However, Suichin later thinks that even if it was the system, he still couldn't afford to do it. The ghost tells the guy not to worry, saying that since he did it, he will find a decent way out of the situation. He takes the girl into his arms and says that he will erase her memory so that she will not even remember what happened between them. The ghost touches Lee Hanyi's forehead with his finger, concentrating the dark energy around her, and continues to say that everything will be as if last night never happened. He asks with a certain smile if this is funny and claims that this will make things better for the girl now. Suddenly, Suichin removes the ghost's hand from Lee Hanyi's forehead, causing him to ask what he is even doing. The guy says that before he didn't want to talk about trifles, but now the system has gone too far, after which he claims that it will not let him do what he has planned. After this, Suichin rejects the ghost and tells it to go away. The ghost tries to slow down on the floor of the hotel room, but he still gets carried quite far. He decides to simply watch the guy's actions, a sly smile visible on his face. Suichin says that they have no right to erase Lee Hanyi's memory and that he must answer for his actions without help from the system. Next, he turns to the girl and says that he is sorry, adding that whether she forgives him or not, he will be responsible for what he did. The ghost continues to offer to erase the memory, saying that it will be easier and more fun. However, Suichin does not change his mind and aggressively orders him to shut up. To this, he adds that he has already ordered the ghost to leave and repeats this order. After a certain pause of several seconds, the ghost of the system only laughed rudely at such a statement. His form becomes more abrupt and yet ephemeral, and he claims with a smile that he didn't know Suichin could be aggressive. The ghost grabs the guy by the neck, not allowing him to move and reminding him of how he was a loser hiding in the toilet. The ghost's face and Suichin's suddenly begin to merge, and the former says that he has been a weakling for so long that he has forgotten what kind of guy is in front of him. The merging continues, and he says that they are one whole and some human values are not given to be relevant for them. The ghost even says that he regrets not replacing Suichin sooner, to which Suichin responds by telling him to go to hell. However, the voice of his consciousness remembers people close to him, Carly, Motu, and calls for help. Moto was in a slightly different place and was watching an open sewer hatch. Eventually, he decides that he has found the place he needs and decides to go down. However, Mota simply jumps into this hatch without needing to rely on any ladder, after which the hole from the hatch itself disappears. In front of the guy, there are majestic gates, built into the rocks and decorated with various patterns. In the center, instead of a lock, you can see a closed eye. However, this eye sensed the presence of a creature nearby and therefore immediately opened to check who had come. Mota simply says that it is him without any special introduction, which should mean that he will definitely be recognized. And indeed, the eye of this gate did not waste a single extra second and let the guy through, telling him to come in. As soon as Mota appeared in a somewhat strange room, similar to a bar or a wine cellar, he was doused. The boy looked at the man who addressed him, but did not answer with a word. It was a middle-aged man who looked like a bartender, and he invited Motu to sit down, saying that he did not need formalities. After this mysterious bartender says that everything happened as he predicted, and after 396 years, the guy returned to him.